Good morning, afternoon. I guess it's afternoon for all of us, isn't it? November 1st. We're in the final stretch, 3 more sessions, and you have completed Ignite. Some of you have actually completed it for a second time. Whoop, whoop. All right, guys. I want to open it up first, see if you guys have any questions. Today's kind of I see today being a class, I might get a little more participation out of you guys. I'm kind of looking like grandpa today here. What the heck? I've got my grandson all week. My kids are out of town, and I had to get him ready this morning because he spent the night, and I realized I didn't shave. I'm looking all grandpa-ish on you guys.
It's okay.
Halloween's over, and I'm still scaring people. Maybe myself. Oh, yeah, I did forget to get that done. No, but today's like real world stuff that I think I would expect maybe you guys have some questions about negotiating. And I know this is called negotiating the deal, but the stuff that I'm going to share through here is like negotiating in general. It's like negotiating a buyer we talked about during the buyer consultation to get their best offer first, negotiating to get a seller to adjust their price when they've overpriced their property, negotiating to get your offer accepted. So I do want to throw out there, if anybody's had any deals where maybe it didn't go the way you wanted it to, you didn't get accepted in a multiple offer situation, anybody have anything you want to get out of today's negotiation stuff, things that aren't going like you wanted them to? We have a class called Negotiating the Deal. Negotiate the deal. What's that mean to you guys? What are you hoping to get? Because this is your class. I know all this stuff.
It'd be ideal to learn how to do this and negotiate. So there's always a win-win situation.
All right, cool. That helps. I'm going to grab that. Anybody else? How many of you need more deals to negotiate? Right? Yeah. Okay. Everybody can hear me okay, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, just how to negotiate. And I will tell you, this is something I talk about all the time, that real estate school does not teach negotiations. Actually, let me back up because we're already starting in scripts. This is a listing presentation script. When I'm opening up that conversation, and I don't really do a listing presentation, it is more of a consultation, and it's asking questions, tell me about your situation, what's your time frame, why is that important to you, all the bold scripts that you've heard before. And I don't even know if they're bold scripts. There's scripts everywhere. We've got them everywhere. And in the listing presentation, one of the first things that I start out the conversation with is I say, now, one of the things I want to talk about, today is that in real estate school, it basically costs $400 to go to real estate school, and they teach you how to pass the test. What they don't talk about in real estate school, and you guys tell me give me a heads up if this is the same in your market when you went to real estate school, they don't teach marketing. In fact, I don't even know if the word marketing comes up, right? They don't teach negotiations, or at least most of our schools don't. They don't teach negotiation skills. When we negotiate a real estate transaction, we're not negotiating $100 here and $100 there, like when you're buying a car. We're negotiating $1,000 here and $1,000 there. In your guys' market, you can say, we're negotiating $10,000 here and $10,000 there. So you want to hire a negotiating specialist, and they don't teach that in real estate school. And most real estate agents, the only training they've had is real estate school. In fact, that could be you guys right now. You can still have the conversation. As long as you talk confidently, they're not going to say, well, what about you? Are you just out of real estate school? And even if they did, if you're new, you still are going to say, listen, we have 1,500 agents with so much experience. That's my team. That's what's different about our company versus most companies, is we're all working together as a team, right? We keep talking about team and getting your picture taken. Well, and if you're just tuning in, we've talked about getting a picture taken with the title company, your lender, your inspector, have them all come in buy them lunch or something one day and do a photo shoot with you and this big team, because they are your team. you can do a picture with some of your agents in the office. They're your team, right? Especially if you have a mastermind. I mean, you could take a picture with them and you're going to use it in your marketing to your database. Or agents around the country, right? It's like, hey, I have a team that I mastermind with to make sure we deliver great service when you send referrals our way. So you can see how that marketing piece in there is just shows you as a team and shows your strength. And same with negotiation skills. I know for a fact if you guys got in a jam on a contract that you were afraid you weren't going to get accepted, that you'd probably have somebody you could call in the office and say, hey, how should I handle this? And I know for a fact you have one, me. Pick up the phone and call me, right? Do you all have my cell phone number in your cell phone? If you do, send me a text right now so I can tag you in my phone, because that's probably the best place you want to be to make sure I have you in my phone if I got referrals coming that way, right? So text me a message and say, hey, add me to your phone, and I'll add you to it. All right. Anything else that anybody wants to have? I've knocked anything loose, some cobwebs in there on negotiations, or anything that you want to get specifically out of today? All right, then we're going to dig in, and let me get my slideshow up here. Got to slide my mouse across 3 different screens here. Get to my slideshow. Ah, there we go. All right, and share my screen. Now, hopefully you guys are still downloading the book, reviewing the book before you come to class, taking your notes in the book while we're doing class, and then right after class is over, just go back through the book and look at your notes again and grab some of those important things. I usually write them on the cover or something like that, action plans, to-dos, because the information, I mean, I'm giving you guys high level information. You may not be at a point right now in your career where you necessarily need everything that we're covering in Ignite, which I would challenge you even more so to just keep coming every single week until this stuff is just ingrained in you, because you're not getting out there and using it enough. Or make a summary page at the end of Spark and at the end of Elements on the top 10 things that you got out of that session, and go through it just keep going through it until you get enough deals that you're using it and you hear yourself using it. But the point I want to make sure you guys understand is we're not going to master this stuff in this one class, or even in this, if it's the second time you're through it. It's a 1-hour session set up to keep you plugged into the conversations constantly, so that when you are experiencing them through the day, you're going to start piecing it together. And I can just tell you from personal experience that this is what I did. I mean, this Ignite class, now this was pre-KW. Keller Williams wasn't even around, I don't think, when I started in real estate in 91, or it might have been in Austin, Texas. I don't even know if it was in Dallas then. So I have to figure that out. How long ago did it actually start? But I was in Minnesota at another company, and we had a listing boot camp that was 8 weeks. And I went through it. Once you paid for it, you could just go through it over and over and over again. I'm telling you, I went through it for a year, and it was 8 weeks. I went through it for a year, and I must have gone through it a dozen times. And that was when I realized repetition is key. So you're not going to master this stuff today. It's here to inspire you to ask questions, and we want to get you out there. I hope you're working on your master list. Pulled your Facebook friends' names off of Facebook, wrote them down in a notebook, go through your cell phone list, open up your contact records, write down every name in that notebook, and then go find if you have their phone number, and then more importantly, find their address. Phone number and address, 2 most important pieces, because you got to make the call to connect with them so you can write them a handwritten note. Email's irrelevant. Guys, I mean, just, you're not going to create a relationship through an email drip plan. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. You're going to get a 1% conversion rate. So you're just going to keep beating your head on the wall until you're feeding in 5 people a day that you talk to, wrote a handwritten note to, connected with. Doesn't mean you won't talk to only 5 people. You might talk to 10 people, but you're only going to really connect with 5 people a day. You might dial 20 numbers, right? So you're not just going to connect with everyone, so they don't automatically get that handwritten note unless you connect. The other ones that you got on the phone and talked to for a second, you can put those like in command and put them on a smart plan. Just make sure the smart plan isn't all email, because they're not going to see your emails after about 5 or 6 emails. They're just going to blacklist you, or they're going to highlight you in a chunk and delete. And so every day you'll come in, especially I'm talking to new agents right now, that you become white noise, and every day you send those out and look at the smart plans, you think and feel good that you're working today, but you're not getting the business that you thought. And that's because they're not seeing it. So we want to cross them over to where you're really talking to them. The phone, this baby right here, is the best money maker on the planet. It's just, anytime you got somebody, oh, I'm going to send them a message, just pick up the phone and call them if you haven't done so. Just call instead and then send the email, and watch how powerful that email is. So anyway, I know that's not negotiating, but it is core to getting you guys on the path to 100 sales. And that was one of the reasons why I was excited working with Mary Beth to come in and do this stuff for you guys, because I'm excited about getting every agent to 100 sales. And I know we got to get to 25 first, and then to 50, and then to 100. But I'm talking about adding 100 sales above anything and everything you've ever done before. So, okay, let's see what we got going here. Any questions or anything anybody want to throw in, ask, add? All right, let's go. So focusing on our business, we're talking about negotiating contracts. I already said they don't teach negotiating skills in real estate school. So here's the breakdown of the common points of a negotiation. Examine the 3 P's: the approach to negotiation, analyze counter tactics, real play. So we don't do the real play stuff here on our 1-hour session, but putting the 3 P's into play, we'll talk about those. Recap your success list and your daily success habits. So we're going to talk about all those things today and how that plays out. All right, so here we go. Buyer, buyer's agent, seller, seller's agent. There's 4 people involved in this negotiation stream. And something has to come from the buyer if you're the buyer's agent, something has to come from your buyer to you. Then you have to get it to the seller's agent. Seller's agent needs to get it to the seller. And so this already adds a layer of mastery level needed to negotiate well, to be able to translate what you want the seller to hear through the seller's agent. And in Keller Williams, we're all win-win or no deal. That doesn't mean your competitors are. It doesn't mean that all the Keller Williams agents are, right? So everybody's got their own way and how they've been brought up, and people can come into Keller Williams and not be Kellerized yet. So you just understand that you want to negotiate even at a little better than mastery level to be able to get them to say to their client what you want them to say. So how can your ability to negotiate affect the outcome of the deal? I mean, some of this stuff is pretty obvious stuff. Well, your ability to negotiate could be the difference between your buyer getting the property at a better than current market value. It could be the difference between getting the seller to fix $10,000 worth of stuff in the house when they didn't want to. It could be the biggest difference of just them getting the house. Because if you're in multiple offer situations, man, you have to think strategically from the very second that they're interested in this property by finding out how well do you have to negotiate this deal. So write this down, every single property that my buyer inquires about, which through the process, I told you guys I have them drive by the property first before I go show it to them. And this goes all the way back to negotiating with them to play my game the way I want them to play. And that is during the buyer consultation, we say that I'm going to get you the properties, the newest listings, the second they go live. In fact, you're going to know about them when every single agent knows about them, because I'm sending them to you from the system that the real estate agents use. That's called MLS. But like I have taught in the past, if you've been attending, is to break down the real estate lingo and make it like digestible for the consumer, because they don't live in our world. They don't know what MLS is most of the time. And nobody's going to sound stupid and go, what's MLS? Most people won't do that. It'll just fly right over their head, and then they don't really know what you're saying. So during that time, it's like, I'm going to get them to you the second they come on the market. Your job will be to get by that property as soon as possible. Like even on your lunch break, you guys have heard me say this before if you've attended several classes. Even on your lunch break, drive by, and if it still looks good, then you call me or text me and I'll get it set up. So whenever that call or text comes back in and they're like, hey, I'm interested in the property. I've already had 3 of them this morning that have said, hey, what's this address? I'm checking to see if it's available on MLS. I'm copying the agent's email, sending them an email. And my generic email is, hey, how's the traffic going on your new listing? Question mark. Do you have any offers in hand yet, or had any offers come in, or in hand, or any come in? So I'm trying to find out, do they have offers that they've received, or have there been offers in the past and they haven't put any in place? So I always send, that's just my default on any address they send me while I'm checking it if it's still available, right? Before I even set it up for showings or anything. So just like today, one of my buyers drove by 2 properties. They both came on this weekend. They're both already under contract. She didn't call me the day it hit. She needs, and every time we talk, it's like, you really got to go buy some of these properties the minute I send them to you, because if they're a good deal and if they're your dream property, they're probably going to have offers on them right away. So I just train them to go buy them the minute they hit the market. So she texted me about 2 properties and they're both under contract already. So she knew they were going to move fast, and she's like, yeah, I should have went by when I got them from you. So anyway, sometimes it's training. However, I'm not investing time running out to the properties that aren't available and or that they haven't driven by yet. So kind of a little bit of negotiating there to get them to drive by the properties first. Some people feel uncomfortable about that, and it's just because you think that they think that you don't want to spend any time with them. But when you describe the value of driving by the properties and being one of the very first people to see it, they will drive by the property first. So you just have to create that value. And I always jump in. I think if you guys raise your hand, oh yeah, I guess the chat is just me actually. Raise your hand if you guys have any questions. All right. So here we do have a question. I'm new agent. I have been doing that to give my cards to do to so many people, and spoke to my neighbor. Yeah. So the master list and the phone call and the handwritten note are probably the most critical thing that you can do. If you're new in real estate, handing out your card isn't going to do anything. I'm sorry. I have a stack of business cards. They're not laying on my desk right now. Yeah, here we go. Let's just see what I've got sitting here. I've got 2 business cards sitting right here. Sports clips. I'll never do anything with this person. Secured title of Kansas City. I mean, that's just sitting on my desk, but they haven't gotten any business from me because I got their business card. So I'm going to be honest and tell you that business cards, handing them out aren't going to just automatically get you business. It's getting them into command, putting them on a smart plan that reminds you to pick up the phone and call them and let them hear your voice. So there is, and actually new agents too, remember, like kind of what I was saying, you haven't had enough at bats yet to know what questions to ask or what you need to remember while we're going through all this negotiating stuff. And the way to get more bats is to pick up the phone and call people. You don't have to necessarily, they don't have to be selling right now or buying right now. And I'm just going to tell you right now, I know where new agents are. It's like, you've got to get some sales going so you can use some of these things that we're talking about, but you're not going to get it by an all email drip plan or just mailing out cards saying, hey, I'm in real estate. 98% of the people that you are sending everything to and handing cards out to are not moving right now. See, it'd be different. All the stuff that we've been taught in outside of this class and me talking about the 100, all of those things would be incredibly valuable if everybody was always considering a move. But if everybody's moving every 5 years or 10 years, then only 20% of the people are moving this year. So if you only have 100 people, 20% of that is 20 people moving in the next year. 20 people divided by 12 is less than 2 per month. That unfortunately is where most people get stuck in their real estate careers, because they just grab 100 and you're going to find 2 this month. You're going to grab another 100 next week and find 2 this month. You're going to grab another 100 next month and grab 2 next month. And so they just kind of just keep grabbing instead of keeping in touch with the other 98 people from the first 100, the 98 people from the second 100, and the 98 people from the third 100. Now you've got 300 people. And if 20% of them are moving in the next 12 months, that's 60 people moving. 60 people divided by 12 is now pretty quickly getting up to 4 to 5 deals a month. And we're talking out of 300 people. So it's the follow-up and the picking up the phone and not necessarily hounding them about real estate. Because I think if you can remove that for a minute and focus on the 5 to 6 to 800 people on your Facebook friends list and in your cell phone, you can start talking to people, just talking, connecting. It doesn't have to be about real estate because they're not moving. If they are thinking of moving and they are one of the that are moving this month, they'll talk about real estate. Now, as soon as you do that, then you go back to tracking down your for sale by owners, tracking down your expireds, doing some of the mapping things that we've talked about. And if you haven't been in every class, everything's recorded so you can go back and listen to them. And there actually is a marketing for listings session and marketing for buyers session. So you can go back and check those out and listen to the content in there on, going 5 miles around where they currently live and finding the properties that sold 5 to 10 years ago. Which brings us back to when you're doing those activities, you're going to find yourself in a position to use these negotiating tactics more. So what are some ways that you negotiate in your everyday life? I mean, do you guys negotiate with your kids every day? If you have kids, do you negotiate with your spouse every day? Yeah. I mean, we negotiate every day. So now start paying attention to how you're having those conversations. And when you win, right? What did they say to win? My wife, Lynette, probably wins more negotiations just by looking at me with her cute little eyes. And then I buy her a golf cart today. I haven't told her yet. I'm going to surprise her, but she might actually be in her office and already heard that I went ahead and got it. So anyway, it's like, do we really need a golf cart? And she just looked at me. It's really nice. Okay, she just won. Got me. Anyway, it'll be cool. What are the skills that great negotiators possess? Okay, this is key, guys. You got to talk about the value of what the other party gets by taking the terms that you're trying to get them to accept. So if you're coming in to present a contract and you're under asking price, and let's just say in your market, it could be $10,000 or $20,000 under asking. Because let me ask you guys, do you have properties listed in your market that are overpriced, like grossly overpriced? Yes. So if that buyer, and there are some, if you watch the market, like not every single property on the market, trying to get to my bigger screen so I can see y'all. Not every single property on the market gets multiple offers and goes $50,000 over. If somebody overpriced a property by $100,000 because they didn't know what it would go for, they thought it would go for more, those are the properties that sit on the market for 30, 40, 50 days, and the agent just didn't know. I mean, are you guys seeing any of this in your market? Where you see, or is every single property selling for 30, 40,000 over asking price? Every single 100% of them? No, right. So if a buyer, the buyers are going to know what the value of the property is because they're watching every saved property search come across their screen, and they're looking at it and they're evaluating the value of that house based on bedrooms, area, price range. And they're looking at 10, 20 houses every time they go online. And then they're out looking at 5 or 6 houses before they buy one. So they already know if one house is $100,000 overpriced. So for that offer to come in and be $100,000 under asking price, and let's just say it's only been on the market for 7 days, and all you have is the seller's agent between you and the seller, and this person took the listing $100,000 overpriced, so it's probably told them and given them the impression that it could sell for that. You got to assume all that. And now you got a buyer that's ready to buy this property and really wants to offer fair market value for it. You have to negotiate that sale to make that seller think that what they're getting is the best offer they're really going to get. And so now it comes back to the seller's agent that I have to provide data with my offer that shows that this is really a great offer. I know it's 100,000 under your asking price, but here are the sales. And I'm going to pull up just like a CMA that's going to go with the offer. This, and actually this one's kind of an extreme example. The selling agent would have gotten a call from me, and I would have said, man, I'm trying to get this seller or this buyer to make a decision on your property. I'd love to sell it for you. And we know it's grossly overpriced, right? So I'm just trying, I can't find the comps. Do you have some comparables that you can send me that I could share with my buyer? Now, I already know it's overpriced, and flat out, the agents can't provide comps. If they do, they provide comparable properties that aren't comparable. And then I get to use that in my favor, negotiating the comps that I'm going to send back that are exactly like that house, that are exactly at the price range we're offering. Now, also keep in mind that I'm representing the buyer, not the seller. So in that particular case, I went through a buyer consultation. They signed the buyer agency. I'm representing them. And now I have to show, they send me the comps and I send back the comps that I'm sending. My buyer's coming in $100,000 low. There might be one property or maybe two that are somewhere in between where they are, but I'm going to send the 3 comparables that match up or average my offer. I'm probably not going to send one that shows much more, because I want them, I'm working for the buyer, and it's the seller's agent's job to know about the other 2 properties that might have sold somewhere in between their grossly overpriced and where they are. But I'm going to send the 3 that are right around that price range, just like an appraiser would do. Now, this sounds contradictory to if you went through the listing session where we talked about pulling up the 1-line report of the whole neighborhood and the 1-line report from MLS for bedrooms, floor plan, age range, right? And we average those to get the average price. On those reports, we're looking at solds to figure out what it's going to sell for. We're also looking at those 2 reports after we know where the average house is going to sell for, and I'm sitting in an average house. I go back and now I look at what's for sale and what's the average asking price, and the asking price is here and the actual sale price is here. So we can actually price somewhere in here and maybe get them to sell their property for more than what it should sell for, but be underpriced what everybody's asking. That's how you do supply and demand. Now, when there's no houses for sale, then that's a different story. Now I have no man's land, or I really just have the solds. I can look at pendings and see what those list prices were on the pendings. But now back to representing a buyer, though, that's a different ballgame. Now I'm only showing 3 properties that justify our offer. And I'm putting a note on there that I'm hoping that the selling agent will share with the seller. And here's what I'm going to tell you. The seller already knows their property is overpriced. And how many times those overpriced sellers, well, we just don't want to give it away. We want to see if we can get it. That conversation is happening almost every single time when a seller's overpriced their property. The agent just did a horrible job at negotiating them back to the price they should have put the house at. And there's a difference between houses that are a little overpriced or pushing the price a little bit and still getting showings but not getting offers. That's just playing the market really, really tight. Guys, I'm the first one to tell you, I don't underprice my properties. I price them above where I think they will sell. And my average is to make 3 price changes. This is just Brad Korn's world, right? I will make 3 price changes on average, but I never have the listing sitting there not getting showings. Or I don't have the listing sitting there that's getting $100,000 low offers. If we got 10,000 low because we pushed the price a little bit, I'm now taking off that hat and putting on my hat to negotiate with the seller that they better take this offer, because remember, we pushed the price. Yeah, but we've only been on the market a day or 2. It's like, guys, we pushed the price. This is an offer in hand, and there was 5 other showings and nobody brought us an offer. By the way, these are negotiating skills. We're negotiating right now with our seller to take this offer. And that's where another negotiating skill is. I really just have the net sheet already printed out, which you guys can download from the Google Doc. I know I'm just like unloading so much stuff on you guys if you're new. So I hope you're writing as fast as you can, and you'll go back and look at your notes, and you'll go back and watch this recording again. Because this is a big class. Negotiating skills are what is going to bring your value. Actually, this right here is what brings my value, because I charge a little higher percentage than everybody else in my market does. Enough that Keller Williams, like Maps, Tony DeCello actually got his attention once and going, no, he really does do this X percent every single time. And he gets it every single time. And I don't have to trick anybody into it. It's because I create value and I negotiate why it's beneficial for them to have this, that have that extra commission. I'll talk about that one in a minute. So anyway, negotiating with that seller to go ahead and take the offer that's only 10,000 under asking price, but they've only been on the market 2 days. Okay, let me pause for a breath for a second and tell you what I see happen. Most of the time, offer comes in 10,000 low, and we go back to our seller and we're like, we got an offer, but it's 10,000 low. I mean, you're already telling them they shouldn't take it. And it's like, what do you guys want to do? It's not what do you guys want to do? I mean, that they don't fly the airplane. You are the real estate agent. I don't care if you have a lot of sales or don't have a lot of sales. You have a lot of experience behind you in the office you're in, right? And you can call your productivity coach. You can call Mary Beth. You can call your leadership. You can call another top agent or friend that you're friends with. And you have all that back experience that they're not flying the airplane. You are. So
Yes, I see someone has made order in my account. I didn't authorize the order. Can you check it for me?
oh, we got let me just get this background noise going. There we go. So you've got back people to help you provide the value, and you are flying the airplane. You don't have the passengers on this flight to sell their house, to get them from listing to contract to close and move. You don't have them come up into the cockpit and fly the plane. You are the expert, right? So you do tell them when you say it like that, and you're like, well, what do you want to do? It's like, well, let's just at least counter and see what they say. And you kind of say, yeah, I mean, that sounds like a good plan. That's not negotiating them to get this offer accepted. Because if you counter and go back and the buyer changes their mind and they walk, it's over. Like, you don't get a second chance. So the first chance is, if you got a check for this today, here's negotiating to get a seller to take an offer. So I ran a net sheet for you based on the offer, the way it was received. And then you say, circle the amount on the net to them, because you got to have their loan payoff. You got to have some information if you're going to follow this system. But because I do that, I can say, here's the check. Let's just say it's 150,000. If I wrote you a check right now today for $150,000 and handed it to you and said, this thing's done, like there's nothing else you need to do with this house. You can now move and do whatever you wanted to do, pay off whatever you want to do. If I wrote you a check for $150,000 today and said you were done with this house, would you be okay with that? And I don't say, would you be happy, because it's all obviously low and they'd be happier with more. I specifically say, would you be okay with that? And that's where they usually say, well, I mean, that would be okay. And I'd say, would you at least, be glad you got it done, if that's the check you could get and you couldn't get any more? It's like, no, we could live with that. Okay, now I have to like really get them to consider taking this offer and not countering. If they said, oh, we would keep the property before we sold it for that, then I would say, well, how far off is it? What's that check need to be? And they'll say 400,000. I said, no, that's the purchase price of the home. I'm talking about, I'm writing you a check for 150. What's the check amount need to be that you walk after your loan's paid off, your closing costs, everything? Like, well, Brad, we really need at least 160. That's like our bottom dollar. Okay, so now see how the conversation, rather than going back and countering $20,000, we only have to counter $10,000, right? Now, the second negotiating thing I'm going to tell you that I've learned is that whenever people are countering, and this is on lower priced offers, so we are going to have that market again very soon, so I'm going to talk about it anyway. I'll flip it around to the overpriced offers too and how you get those. So I tell them that in my experience, when you got your asking price and you got the offer that you've received, if you meet them at the 50-way mark, I will say over half the time that buyer's not gonna, that's not the number they were thinking. They were thinking a little bit higher than where they came in. Where you really mess with the buyer, now I'm representing the seller, where you really mess with the buyer is you come in just under the halfway mark. So if it was $10,000, right, and 5,000 is the middle way, we're only going to counter $4,000 because now we've really messed up their whole formula, because they wanted, if it was $10,000 difference and 5 is the middle, they were probably expecting to get it for 2,500 more than that if you countered all the way. But if they were expecting to get it in the middle of the middle, and when I come into the middle of the middle of the middle, do you follow me on that? That's where you throw a wrench in. They like, oh man, that's so close. It's not worth countering again for another $1,000. And I've eliminated the back and forth negotiating. So that's a very, very masterful negotiating skill. Is whenever you guys watch, I mean, if you let them kind of control this, they're going to say the halfway number and say, that's where I just want you to say, all right, so that at the halfway point, the buyer probably wasn't thinking that same number. They're thinking just a little bit under that. Let's just bump that down a little bit more, closer to their number. You're giving up, we say you're giving up $1,000, but you haven't sold the house yet. So you're not giving up anything. Another negotiating script is, remember, we took the price and we just pulled the price out of the air. The price we had it listed for doesn't mean anything. It was just our best guess at what we thought would generate traffic and generate an offer. So we have that today. We have an offer and it's not full price. And if you cut it in half, just go a little bit under that. And it's still not, you're not losing any money. You're not giving your house away. The house isn't sold yet, but you're going to totally throw a wrench on their side of the negotiations, and we can just eliminate it now. And they'll probably end up paying a little more than they wanted to, but it was so close to the number they had in mind, it's not worth countering again. Now, as I say that, there are some deep personalities that they can come back and go back and forth no matter what, and it's rare. It's like 1 out of 20. It's 5 out of 100 will be that way. So you're not going to have that often. If it does show up on your very first time you try this, believe me, you're not going to see it again if you get to move into properties. All right, so I've dumped a lot here. Why is asking questions important? Well, that's like when I sent the email out. You know, how many showings have you had? How many of you have in hand? Another great one I always ask is, if my buyer chose this property, when would you be able to get with the seller? Because if they say, well, we're taking offers all the way through the weekend, and we're like, today's Monday, we're going to review them on Wednesday. It's like, okay, well, my buyer's actively looking. If something better comes on the market between now and Wednesday, they may make an offer on that, but I think I could get them to go your way. If you got a great offer for your seller, I mean, like a great offer for your seller, would you be able to meet with the seller and present it before Wednesday? Why not ask that? How many of you right now, it's like, holy smokes, guys, I have literally cut out the competition, and my buyer has gotten the property because I put an expiration the next day when they said, well, I mean, if it was a great offer, I can get with them tonight and share it with them. But we're still waiting until Wednesday to make decisions. Well, the offer comes in, it's at asking or a little over asking price, and it expires tomorrow, so they don't have till Wednesday. And I told the agent, it's like they are actively writing offers, and I mean, they probably won't wait around till Wednesday. So just run the net sheet. So I get the offer written up, and it was, I think that one, the one I'm thinking of right now, was 12,000 over asking price, and this property would have gone for 30 over asking price. We were 12 over asking price. And we had missed out on 3 properties that were going for 20 and 30 over asking, right? So it was a KW agent, so that helps. Your reputation with agents helps. And I called the agent, and I did the exact same script I just gave you. And she said she could present it that next day. So I had it expire. And then when I sent the offer over, I said, hey, just run a net sheet for your seller and show them what they would net on this offer and see if we can maybe make this work. Cause I don't know if I'll have these buyers around 2 more days from now. And she called me back and said, my sellers are going to take the offer. Well, because it was 12,000 over their asking price. That agent actually missed out on maybe getting $15,000 or $20,000 more, knowing the area and knowing the way contracts were going. But the seller saw a bigger net than what they had, and they weren't greedy. And the agent was smart to have that conversation with them. I don't know that they gave up anything because I don't know what the other offers would have been and how far over they would have gone, because shortly after that, our market started coming back down to reality, right? So she did the best thing by going back to the seller and showing them the net sheet. Here's the thing. They sold their house at an acceptable price that they liked the net. So it doesn't matter if somebody would have paid more. That's a would, could, should thing. You don't know what happens in reality. And my buyers may have bought something else. So there's nothing bad happening here. It's just making people really think it through. So a lot of times, here's another negotiating skill. If on the listing side, if I get offers that come in and I want to milk that for as much time as I can to try and get a second or a third offer, I'll call the agent back and go, especially if they were like at ask or under asking price. I use that to my advantage all the time. And I say, hey, the sellers are really crunching the numbers. This is tight. So I know your expiration was 5 o'clock today, but I just know we're going to need till tomorrow morning, because they didn't come in at asking price and they had terms in there that cost the seller more, closing costs, warranty plan, that kind of stuff. Right. So if it was a full price offer, clean cash deal, I don't need to stall. All I got to do is show my seller the net and say, here's the check you're going to get, and it's cash. And they'd be like, that'd be awesome. That's what we were hoping we'd get. We're going to take the offer and be done with it. Does that make sense? You guys doing good? Okay. So, but when it comes in low, I'm going to buy as much time to try and drum up a second offer, because there's 2 negotiating camps happening here. The first one is with the buyer's agent to buy time that we're really crunching the numbers tight. We got to get a payoff. I mean, there's just things in the offer that they just need to really crunch the numbers. The second one is that with the seller, I'm working to get a second offer. I'm messaging everybody that's shown it, saying, hey, there's an offer in. Have your people been sleeping on it? Trying to drum up a second offer, because then that gives me the ammunition when I go back to the seller really the next day, or we're talking through the offer anyway, saying, hey, I've spent the last evening, no other agents have emailed me back. There is no other interest in the property. This may be the best offer that we have. So now you can see how I just set them up for that whole conversation about negotiating halfway in between. It's like nobody else wanted to write an offer, which here's another negotiating script with a seller. That means that when nobody else wrote another offer in your market, it could be, that means 10,000 lower than where we are right now wasn't even close enough to get any of those people to come off the fence. So if we lowered our price 10,000, we now might be close to where they're willing to come in 10,000 under that. But if we were here and it was a sweet deal and we underpriced the property, we would have had multiple offers. But we pushed the market. And if we drop the price, if we were that close, if we're just going to drop the price $5,000 or $10,000, we should have already gotten offers from these people looking, because that's close enough that they would do it. So we might be $20,000 under this. The next price drop would be tell us if we were close to the right price yet. So this offer that's coming in at 10,000 low and nobody else wrote any offers might be our best deal. So you guys see that, and that countering that $5,000, is that worth losing the buyer over? So I will have that conversation. If they say, well, let's meet them halfway. It's like, we can do that. However, I want you to consider all the information. So if you do that and you send a counter offer back, and let's just say that you were their second favorite house, right? We don't get a second chance. If you give them the opportunity to walk, they will walk. And you're only going to realize that when it's too late and you can't get them back. If there's another house that they're going to write an offer on after I send this counter offer back, we don't get them back. And we don't have any other buyers to go to. So that's when I come back and I say, so let me ask you again, if I wrote you a check for 150 today and you're done and you can move on and get your other house or be in Florida by December, bring that stuff back in. That's part of negotiating, right? Is keeping track of their hot buttons and tie it to that. Is that worth that? And it's like, we could live with that. Then I'm going to say, then you guys have to decide, is it worth countering 5,000? And most of the time, guys, that conversation, they're like, yeah, we should just take it. Or at least one of the spouses is like, we're taking this offer, right? So now I've got them against each other, not me. And my job was to get the property sold for an acceptable price. And that is an acceptable price for one of them for sure. And the other one said he could live with it. You guys see what I'm saying here? This is how that is all negotiations. All right, I'm going to shut up for a second, give you guys a chance to jump in here if you have any questions or clarity on anything that I've said. Am I explaining this really well for you guys?
Yes, and I liked how you mentioned the hot buttons. So you really have to pay attention to what their goals and motivations are for buying or selling, and then use it against them.
There is a reason why we have those questions and we go through them over and over and over again in the scripts, is because you grab that and hold on to it. Yeah, I mean, $10,000 and you could be in Florida for Christmas with your grandkids, having Christmas in your new living room, going to a beach after you guys have, open presents.
No brainer.
Right. And so for most people, it may not always come down to the money. And they're like, no, I mean, we're already cashing out in this market the way it is. And most people are. So I'm glad you noticed that. That's great. All right. So, I mean, I've probably already talked about most of this stuff. It's price and terms. And we've already talked about price. With a seller, I use the net sheet. And you do understand too, that when I have a net sheet, that means there may be some things you need to start getting ahead of time at the time of listing, like how much is their loan, right? Do you get their loan information? Do you call the bank through the automated system? And you can do it as a third party and request their payoff amount, or have them do it and make sure you get the payoff amount of their loan. So that when I plug the payoff amount, not the principal balance, but the payoff amount, my net sheet is a little more accurate. And taking those offers, whenever an offer comes in, I just plug those numbers, the price, any closing costs, whatever they ask for, got their loan payoff in there. So this offer, the way it was received, is going to net you X, right? So that I get them focused on that. And it's really tough. Like, you got to understand, you are flying the airplane here. So do not let them in the cockpit to keep talking about the price. Well, we're not going to give the house away. I mean, $450,000 is a good price. You owe $200,000. If you're walking out of closing with $125,000, if I handed you that check today, is it a good day? Well, it is a good day, but I mean, that's coming $25,000 off our asking price. See where this is now coming? Let me bring it back in. Right? We're not mastering this, but if we hear it 2 or 3 times in real play situations, it comes back to, listen, that number, we plucked it out of the air. Remember, that number doesn't mean anything. You've had 10 people through your house. You've had one offer. And I contacted everyone, the other 9 agents. I contacted them when we got this other offer coming in. Nobody else showed up with an offer. So we're at least 10 or 20,000 overpriced, because if we dropped at 10, that might be close enough to get the price that we're really supposed to get. The market's already set the price, not what we're determining. So I have conversations around that. So then I come back to what I started to say. What's the benefit to them? Guys, if you walk out of closing with 125,000, would you do what you wanted to do? And could you be where you wanted to be when you wanted to be there? And they're like, yeah, I mean, and then here's the fun one. I say, I mean, would you still look at this like a good job? I mean, like, we did a good job for you and you would feel comfortable referring us. Ask that, right? And I'm already layering it in there, negotiating for referrals on taking a lower offer. And they're like, no, you really have done a good job. See, now I know I explained it all to the point that they understand that Now the number was plucked out of the air and this might be the best offer they've got. And they're going to say, yeah, you've done a really good job. It's like, believe me, if we could have got 5, 10 more thousand out of this, I would have been the one that would have gotten it, so anyway, that's just, it's always going to come down to price and terms. And a lot of times too, in negotiating offers is they're going to want to negotiate all of them. Well, price is too low. We don't like the closing date. We don't want to pay for their warranty plan. We're absolutely not paying for their closing costs. Guys, this is where I pull out the net sheet. I go, you're going to net 125,000. Is that a number that would work for you? No. 150 is the bottom dollar. We'll keep the house before we do that. So now my job isn't to convince them they need to take less money. If he said 150,000 was their bottom dollar and they're not selling the house, I'm going to have to go back to the buyer's agent representing the seller, right? I'm going to have to go back to the buyer's agent, convince them 150, this 150 net, whatever that price is the best offer or is a great offer for the buyer. So from that 50,000, then I'm going to say, then let's do this. Let's just either leave the terms, all the terms the same and change the price, right? Or is if that closing date's more important, then let's give them the price and get the terms more. If you counter everything, you're basically telling the buyer you don't want to work with them. It's a crappy offer, but we don't have any other offers. I already called the 9 other agents and nobody's willing to write an offer. So what can we work through here to get the least amount of things to counter back? And I almost always like closing cost is my favorite one because you guys will hear this all the time. It's like, I'm not paying for their closing costs. It's like, listen, they're not asking you to physically pay for their closing costs. This is all paper money. It's figured into the price of the house. And so let's just say the house is 300,000 and they want $10,000 in closing costs. They're basically offering you $290 for the house. That's what their offer is. So you don't counter to 300 and then take their closing cost out. You counter to 310 and leave their closing cost in. I mean, if you can't live with that bottom number. So if he says, no, I got to get 150, that's where I would say, then we're just going to counter the price and leave the closing cost in there. Leave the warranty plan in there. I'll rerun the net sheet. There's your 150. That means we got to counter $22,000. So now $22,000 is more than the halfway point of where the original price was and where they came in at. 22,000 is putting us here. So you've got less likely of a chance that they're going to take your offer because they're probably expecting somewhere in the middle to just right here closer to their price. And you're coming back clear up here. So when we send this counter offer back, I want you to be okay if they just walk. Well, we don't want to lose them. See, now we got to talk about the 150 because the 150 is not a real number. That's going to always boil back down to that. So I can just show them all that stuff. So I just took you through a whole negotiating thing for the seller. Now, understand, I'm representing the seller during all of those conversations that I just shared with you. I'm representing the seller, but my job is to get the property sold. Same thing with the buyer. We did this during the buyer session. It's like you ask them what they want to offer. Don't react to it. Just write it down on paper and say, now, if another offer comes in 5,000 higher than that and you miss out on this house, are you going to be okay with that? That's actually a negotiating tactic to get their best offer first. And I'm going to keep asking that question until they say, no, we're not willing to pay more than that. So they say, well, no, we don't want to lose the house over 5,000. I just cross it out and write the new price. It's like, I mean, 5,000 with a 3% interest rate's only like, I don't know, 15 bucks, 20 bucks, something like that. Are you really wanting to lose the house over 20 bucks? No, we're good with that. Okay, so I got the new price down. Say now, if another offer comes in for 3,000 higher and you don't get the house, are you okay with that? Right. And eventually, usually the second or the third time they say, no, we wouldn't pay any more than that. What I did was I just removed me from being the reason they didn't get the house. And believe me, it will happen. They're going to want to blame somebody if they don't get the house. They're going to think something screwy was going on. And the first time you have that situation happen and the buyers don't call you back for a few weeks and maybe even move without you, you better go back and listen to this class and pick that script up and use it, because that is part of negotiating to get them to make their best offer first. So negotiating just the common points. Let me make sure I didn't have any really good stuff on there. I already talked about closing costs. Closing date, I mean, again, if somebody's really particular on a closing date, then maybe giving up some of the price to keep their date on there might be worth doing, right? So getting that, because now the buyer needs to find somewhere else to go. Okay. Any questions on anything so far? Oh,
Oh.
yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask about inspection and, what if you find radon or termites or foundation trouble, then there's a whole
Yep.
another level of negotiating, right?
Yep. Yeah. So on repairs is actually one of the things where you really got negotiating skills, and the negotiating skills are, again, both sides. It's relaying back to the buyer's agent what the seller's not willing to do and getting the seller to fix things that they're going to have to fix, because it's real easy for them to say, we're not doing anything. They're buying it as is.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's a negotiating script. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if you went in to buy a car and they said it's as is, no warranties, they're not putting anything on it, how do you feel about that? Mm-hmm. Well, if I'm getting it cheap enough, I might do it. You just sunk your ship, right? You're going to give up on the price if you're going to not fix stuff. So my negotiating stuff on that is if it's safety, mechanical, or structural. Those are usually things that are valid inspection items. If it's loose doorknobs, things like that, that aren't causing damage to the property, they're just squeaky this, squeaky that, that you can probably negotiate that off the plate unless it's important to the buyer. And so one of the things when an inspection report first comes in, if I'm representing the seller, buyer's agent sends me a report, I'm going to pick up the phone and call them. Hey, I got the inspection report. I'm looking through the items here. I haven't even talked to my seller yet. Looking through the items here. I'm going to take this back to my seller and see what I can do. What's most important to your buyer on this report? Guys, that is the biggest negotiating script of all time. What's the most important thing on this report? I'm going to get several different answers, either everything on the report if they're a smart agent, right? And if not, they're going to say, well, they are concerned about the foundation. The other things, her dad is an electrician. He could fix that. That agent just gave up the farm on the electrical stuff, maybe, right? So I'd still have to negotiate it, but at least I got them to tell me what was important so that when I come back to present it to my seller, it's like, hey, there is, now here's the negotiating side on the seller. There is a whole 40-page report that I'm afraid to send to you because I don't want you looking at everything. There's probably 40 or 50 things that they found. The good news is the buyer's only asking for 10 of them. 10's still a lot, but the buyer's only asking for 10 out of like 40 or 50 things that they found. So we need to go through that inspection report, and I kind of found out what was important to the buyer. I probably won't even cover that on the phone. I'm going to go through it with the seller because they may say, oh yeah, I can do those 3 things myself. And yeah, the other ones seem valid. Then there's no reason for me to convince them to take less. My job is to get the property sold to an acceptable price and terms to the seller. It's not my job to say, all right, let's see if we can whack this down to 5 and do that for every single seller. That's letting them control, everybody else control the transaction, not you. You're there to get the property sold. Now, if they have an issue with something, then I'm going to come back to the other side and give them the benefit of what's the rest of the terms that the seller is doing, that by not doing this, they're still getting a pretty good deal on this house, right? And it could be a radon machine. So I've got a buyer right now that's closing, that hard ass investor flip dude. This guy, they had another cash offer in hand. He would not take anything less than full price and as is. And my poor little lady is an older lady, buying a house for her granddaughters. But this house is $10,000 less than everything else we're looking at. And even though it needs radon and some plumbing work, I just explained it to her that this guy is not budging, and they've got another offer that they will probably take if yours doesn't work out. And so her first initial reaction was, yeah, just forget it. And then she called me back 24 hours later. Now I didn't respond because I still have, you have 3 to 5 days to respond. So I always use up my time because you never know what's going to happen. I didn't call the agent back right away and go, nope, she's not doing anything. I just let it sit there for a minute because I wanted her to think about it. She actually called me back 24 hours later and said, I guess my son really liked the house. He thought we were going to go ahead and move forward with it. And that's where I started talking to her about, listen, the plumbing stuff and everything that we looked at. I mean, I just knew from experience might be about $500 in plumbing stuff. Now she does have a chunk of money saved up for her down payment and everything. So she does have money saved up. I knew she had that because we originally asked for closing cost in there too, but we inflated the price. And the agent even said, now we only want to go this without the closing cost because we're afraid it won't appraise. So I just went back to her and said, hey, you do have the money to pay for this, right? If we drop the price back down and you just have your own closing costs. She was okay with that. So now we're back to $500 in plumbing, and there was high rate on, well, barely high rate on, like 0.3 over the limit. And I said, a radon machine is about $750. You probably got about $500 in plumbing repairs. You need to decide if finding this house under what we've been looking at and doing some repairs with $1,000 or so is worth moving forward. And she goes, yeah, it is. My son really did like the house. I said, if it was falling down, our inspector would have told us that. There's just stuff that needs to be fixed. So she's like, yep, I'll do that right after closing. So that's fine. She's still buying the house and she's happy. She's happy as can be that she's getting this house. Now the house is actually perfect location on a cul-de-sac for her grandchildren and everything, her grandgirls. So they're not going to be on a busy street or any of that kind of stuff. All right, so we did talk about the 3 P's of negotiating. Get over here. The 3 P's of negotiating is prepare, present, and position. And we've kind of been talking about all of that stuff today. Preparing is getting the information, knowing that she has the money to down payment to put it all down, knowing the client, knowing what their payoff is, knowing what their net is, thinking ahead of all of that stuff. The prepare to learn is to ask open-ended questions. You know, always ask questions. Don't assume or try and talk them into anything. You're working with them. So it's almost like anytime they throw, yeah, but I don't want to give my house away. Say, well, tell me what you mean by that. What do you mean by give the house away? I mean, who's giving their house away? That's kind of a silly question anyway. But a lot of times we can jump into that defensive and say, listen, we had 10 people look at the house. We're not giving the house away. Nobody else made you an offer. They're not in our world every day. They don't know that. So just what do you mean by giving it away? Well, we priced it at this. And I can come back and go, well, where did that price come from? Right? Let's go back to the day we were talking. Where did that price actually come from? Well, I mean, based on the sales and what we really wanted, you thought, we could probably start there. I mean, the conversation is going to come out because I never told them what it would sell for. And in fact, we probably said we're going to push the price a little bit based on no houses for sale right now, and we'll come down. Got that with my best friend from high school right now on his house. We started at 500, and he said we probably started too high. We should have probably started lower. He didn't want to start much lower than where he is right now. He's at 489, and he doesn't want to take any less than 479. So I couldn't have started where we were now, or I wouldn't even got him to go to 479, and we got an offer coming in, right? So it's talking about, we didn't start too high because you've had 8 showings when it was 500,000. We were testing the market. Oh, it should have been more clean. It's like, listen, if clean is the reason your house didn't sell, they would have made you an offer. We were pushing the price a little bit, and we did one price change to 489.9, and we got an offer. So ask questions when you guys are going through that stuff to find out the things that you need to find out. Preparing on the doing. There's some samples and stuff in your book where you guys can read some of these. Pay attention to verbal, nonverbal clues. Like when I'm talking to an agent, if they're that one guy where I said he just will not budge, he was a hard ass, right? So, I mean, I paid attention to that. He's not going to budge, and he doesn't care if she gets the house or not. And if he was playing that role, then he did very good because my buyer loved the house and wanted to live over there. And so I just had to make sure that she was happy with it. Whether he's really a hard ass or not, it didn't matter. I wasn't going to get him to budge anywhere. I would have already got that. Keep quiet once you present the offer. A silence is golden on that stuff. You always stay calm and relaxed. I mean, you guys have watched me walking through these scenarios. when things are happening that throw you off, just take a breath, pause for a second, and then ask another question that might just get, to help you understand it better. Help me understand again why the seller really won't fix anything on the inspection report. I'm trying to understand like this, because I would think that any offer you get, at least 5 of these 6 things are going to show up on any offer, right? There's safety, mechanical, and structural issues. So are they really willing for us to walk, my buyer to just change their mind and walk? And if they say, yep, they're just not even going to budge, they'll keep the house, then I've done all I can do. But most of the time that doesn't happen. So we already talked about a lot of this stuff, this like closing dates, and you just ask, tell me more about that date. Why is that date important to you? Well, if we could make it happen, then it would have been great. But if you want to make a little bit more money, is it worth giving up that date? And it might be. So page 12 of your instruction guide has more negotiating type stuff. All right, I know we're going a little bit over here, but negotiations are a lot of stuff here. So anyway, it's recorded if you do have to jump off, and you can come back and listen to the tail end of it. But analyzing counterattack, we already talked about all this stuff. As you guys go through this analyzing counter tactics, if you have a group there or you're looking through the book, walk through those different scenarios. Record yourself what you would say in those situations if you don't have a partner, or if you do have a partner, do that. Call me, we'll go through them, right? So this is more of the, like if we were live session and we were a whole day session, we'd go through having you do the hot potato, the good guy, bad guy, what nibbling is. I want you guys to look at all that stuff. So anyway, that's it. What'd you guys think of today's class? Good stuff?
Yeah, very good stuff.
Very good.
Any questions that anybody has, or anything that you want more clarification on that I might not have covered completely? I'm going to put the review, the little session review in the chat here so I can hear your guys' feedback. Uh-oh, is it not going? Why am I not? Oh, let me see
It's
here.
there.
Everyone, there we go. Try that. There you go. All right, guys, go ahead. If you can, copy that link, open it up in a new tab, or just click on it. It'll open up a new tab. And just if you get a second, go through and evaluate the class. Let me know what you liked about it. If there's anything you would have liked me to do more, keeping in mind that we have 1 hour that we're running this session on, so you guys can make more sessions and hear more information, which is why I suggest keep taking it every time we offer it. Let's build the roster up. So you're going to really, I mean, today's just a quick overview to get you excited about negotiations, to not be scared of them, and to just, get into more deals where you can actually go, oh my gosh, I know we talked about that in that negotiating class. Go back, watch the video, and then learn from it and use it in your everyday. So that's it for today, guys. Have a great day.